Saving and exporting Bryce trees. There are probably more possibilities to save and export a Bryce tree than you are aware of. There are some hidden features, and with Bryce 7 we got tree mesh export. This is what this video is about. But first some warming up. The Bryce Tree Lab came with Bryce 5 and trees are made from metaballs, which also came with that version. The lab has not changed since then, but the trees got a bit better. Some of the trees had quite a noticeable bulge in the middle of the trunk, and this was rectified in Bryce 7. It can still be noticed sometimes, but it is not as pronounced than it was before. So this is Bryce 6, a red oak tree. The bulge is quite pronounced and looks unnatural. This is the same tree, almost the same tree, in Bryce 7. We can still see the bulge here, but it is much less offending than the one in Bryce 6. So here we've got an improvement. This is just to demonstrate that some work was done on the tree lab, even though we did not get the vegetation lab we had asked for at the time. Then Bryce trees are more than just trees, and with a bit thinking out of the box, the lab can produce quite interesting objects. Here are some examples. Bryce trees, made by David Brennan. We see it here. Just Bryce trees. Taking up this idea, I also tried to make a Bryce tree. These are the leaves. Then Russia Carter, 5 years ago, created this artwork with so many trees, though there are not as many trees as you might think. He came up with a very interesting and good idea, which I also tried, and this forest consists of exactly 4 Bryce trees. If you're interested in how this can be done, go to my website, Ray Tracing. There are tutorials on page 2 of Bryce. Down here there are Goodlooking Trees. You can have it as a PDF or you can watch it online, and this is a tutorial just about how to make very good looking trees with the Bryce Tree Lab, mostly ideas by Russia Carter. And here the vegetation, and here of course the pipe tree. Another example of a forest with only a few trees, just in case you are interested. And here yet another example how Bryce trees can be used as grass. Now do watch this video by David, Grass Tree Recipe. It's highly recommended. It's a very good idea. Back to the main topic. David demonstrated the possibility to export the tree mesh after converting it to a terrain, and explains the method detailed in this video exporting a tree as a terrain mesh, which is very interesting to watch. It was actually this video that prompted me to make this one. David's idea is brilliant, but quite labor intensive for the result. Nevertheless, this idea should be kept in mind. It may come in handy for another project. Okay, to get a tree, just click on the tree icon and a random tree is generated. You can modify it as you wish in the tree lab. A tree can be loaded and saved directly from the GUI. The important thing here is to realize that each time a tree is generated or loaded, it will be a bit different. In my experience, setting randomness to 0 if you plan to save it from the GUI as a Bryce tree object, BTO, to get back the tree with few changes. To save a tree from the GUI, select a tree. We have it selected already. Hold down the Ctrl and Alt keys or the Alt Group key and click on the tree icon. This opens the Save As dialog, and you can save the tree with any name, my test, and the tree is saved as a tree object. To retrieve this tree later on, just hold down the Alt key or Option key on the Mac and click on the tree icon, and you get the Open dialog, and you can find it. It was my test, and here we are. The tree is almost but not completely the same as the one we saved before. I'll put it just a bit on the side and put this on the side, and we look at them. It is important to note that only the trunk or the wood material is saved along with the tree. The material for the leaves is not saved, and when the tree loads, the leaves get a random material. This is a disadvantage of this method. The trees look the same, though the material of the leaves is not the same. I show you what can happen if randomness is not at 0 when a tree is saved in such a way. I saved and made available a couple of trees a couple of years ago, and one is the Affenbrot, this one, which I will load now into Bryce, because I have saved it here. So there is Alt and click, and it's the Affenbrot, and it looks already quite different than the one on the web page. I click again on this one, the Affenbrot, but look what I got. Now I remove the leaves just to see what I got. This is a huge tree, and this is absolutely not the tree I have shown here. So this happens because randomness has been set to 70. Now this is probably not very helpful. Nevertheless, this is not a well-known feature, even though it has been available since Bryce 5. I created a tree, I go into the tree lab, and we don't need to use the default tree shape or the default leaf shape. Clicking on the down arrow opens a list. Note that this list is in alphabetical order. This is another improvement thus made to Bryce. Nobody seems to have noticed. In Corel Bryce 5 the list was unsorted. I create a tree, and you see this is absolutely not alphabetically ordered and very difficult to find anything. And already in Bryce 5.5, let's start this one, the list is already alphabetical. So this is just to demonstrate that a little bit was done by us on the tree lab anyway. Now back to Bryce 7. That we have a drop down here is not news to you. There are exactly 60 entries plus the user leaf. There are also 60 here. There cannot be more. But the interesting thing is when you hold down the Alt key and click here, you get an open dialog. This was on tree shapes. I can load tree shapes that are not installed, like this one. And the same thing happens when I do this on the foliage shape, I have to go somewhere where I have the leaves. These are the installed and these are mine. So I got my tree here, a complete different tree. This won't be of great use because the tool with which Corel made the tree shapes and leaf shapes is not available. Nevertheless, if you think you found a cool shape and fear to forget which one in the long list it was, you can copy the TPS and LPS out of the library to any other location and give them a new name. You can then, in any version of Bryce from 5.0 on, access these shapes. Now, how's about that? Now let me see whether I can open this in old Bryce 5. I got the tree, or I got two, I only need one. I go in here. This is the German version. Okay, this works. So I have to go in here. I have this in the renderer, in Bryce 7.1, in the presets. What was that? In the tree shapes I have this tree, and I can get this one, Alt on the leaves, and take this number 2, and I have got the same tree as in Bryce 7.1. So this is also one of the possibilities how you can use the Alt key to access any place on the computer, but this won't be very much used, I think. The best method to save a tree you've labored ages until you got it right is in the objects library. Select a tree, create, I'll go in here, add blah blah, and you have your tree. The tree is saved with all materials. Good-looking trees are often made from 2 or 3 trees. They can be grouped and added to the objects library. Now this is not a very nice tree, and let's get an arbitrary one, and what? Copy paste, and I rotate it a little bit. I think I got 3 in total. Yes, so I rotate this also a bit on the other side, and so I got a very nice tree. I group them all together, group, create, if it works, add another one. I can get this tree again, and here it is back. I even got my ground play, which I inadvertently also saved along with the tree. So this is definitely the simplest and best method. And the best thing of all is you can ungroup, you can select any of the trees, it is still a tree, and you can still change this tree. So you have lost nothing. Now how about exporting the tree as a mesh? Now let's get a tree which I have called a queer tree. This is my tree. As I said, it's really a queer one. Nevertheless, I want to export it, so I have to select it first, which I have done. File, export object, and now you get this dialog. You can export either the trunk or the leaves or both of them. Just click on the name export trunk to toggle it on or off, export leaves to toggle them on or off. The resolution is only for the trunk. So, obviously, if you want the tree near to the camera, you would save it with a high resolution. If you intend to use the tree more in the backdrop, you can go down with the resolution. When you have set what you want, click OK, and here you've got 14 different formats to save this tree as a mesh. I have done so with exactly this tree with 2 different resolutions and in 2 different formats. The formats I used was the 3D Studio or 3ds format, which has a bug. At least I consider it a bug. The mesh itself is saved with the file name given. This is the mesh with the file name given, but the material pictures are saved with a generic name, which means if you export a second tree, the existing pictures get overwritten. You have to create a folder for each tree you export if you want to prevent the loss of the earlier saved materials. And this is not the case for objects saved as Wavefront mesh. Here the file name of the mesh and of the image textures is always changed. So if I save it with another name, this will also change and I can put everything in the same folder. So why would you want to use the 3ds format? Well, the mesh file itself is only 1/4 the size of a Wavefront mesh, and you won't see the difference. This is the Wavefront mesh. The object is 1.2 megabytes and the 3ds one is 380 kilobytes. So this is about 1/4. And this brings us to the question of memory efficiency. Saving directly from the GUI as a Bryce tree object PTO file is far the most efficient way, though the leaf material is lost and the tree altered when loaded. Here is the tree I saved from the GUI, which is a mere 30 kilobytes in size. I saved the tree on the Horo void 3. This is the only object in this library, and when we look over there, this is the objects library, presets objects. This is my folder and this is void 3, and here we can see we need about 210 kilobytes to save that tree in the objects library. Now let's look what we need for a 3ds file. We've seen that the mesh is 380 kilobytes at 20% resolution, and then we've got all these files for the material, which adds up to about 9.5 megabytes. For the Wavefront file, we see that the object itself has about 1.2 megabytes for 20% resolution, and then a few material pictures for the ambient color, the bump map, the diffuse color. Then we have a reflection map and a specular map. Looking at 80% resolution, the 3ds went to 2 megabytes plus the pictures for the materials, and the object got to almost 9 megabytes just to save the mesh. So with all that lot of memory usage or disk space usage, what do we get? These are the reloaded trees. The first one is 20% resolution saved 3ds and 20% saved Wavefront. Though they do not look the same, but they look horrible. This is the 3ds saved in 80%, and this one is also 80% saved as a Wavefront file. They look much better, they look almost the same, however the difference between the two is about 4 times as much memory, and this is actually the tree we've got from the library, the one we've exported. And finally, this one is a little bit different than this one, but it was saved from the GUI as a BTO. So we have to admit that these two look very much better than any one of those we had exported. Of course, we can export them at 100%, and then they will need even more memory. So there you are. Exporting a tree out of Bryce to be re-imported into Bryce is a rather daft idea. Apart from a lot of work, you lose quality and memory space. Exporting a tree to use it in another application is also not the best option there is. Carrara has one of the best tree labs I have seen so far, but it comes at a price. As an alternative to exporting from Bryce, or for importing other trees, consider Arbaro, which is free and can export in Wavefront. Unfortunately, since the project was finished, Tryout is not available anymore for download, but it was one of the easiest to use tree lab I've seen. Well, that's about all there is concerning saving and exporting Bryce trees. I hope you had fun watching this video.